In the rugged hills of Odom County, Kentucky, we meet Cash, a former criminal living a quiet life in a small cabin on his late sister Rachel's farm. He shares the property with his brother-in-law, Finney, and his teenage niece, Savannah, who live in the main house. Cash has left his violent, drug-fueled past behind, a dark time when he isolated himself from his family and fought in deadly turf wars. Now, pushing past the heavy grief and guilt that once consumed him, he pours all his energy into the farm, desperate to find peace in this new chapter of his life. But the past is never far behind. One morning, Cash wakes up, haunted by memories of his days as an enforcer for Big Cat, the sadistic crime lord who rules the county's underworld with an iron fist. He finds himself instinctively biting down on his right hand, the scarred hand that served as the brutal price he had to pay to buy his freedom from her grip. Shaking off the phantom pain, he gets a quick workout in, hops on his motorcycle, and heads to the main house. Inside, he finds Savannah quietly reading her mother's old books, offering her a few words of encouragement before looking for Finney. He finds the grieving husband passed out from another night of heavy drinking, still clutching Rachel's old photo album. Cash sympathizes with him and hesitates to disturb him, but duty calls and he wakes Finney up to go feed the farm animals. The three of them head out to the fields, honoring Rachel's memory in heavy silence. But the quiet is suddenly broken by Savannah's excited shouts coming from the stables. The pregnant horse is finally going into labor. The men sprint over and find the animal struggling. Realizing they're running out of time, Finney steps up, plunging his hands in to help deliver the foal. The family shares a brief, joyful moment welcoming the new life. Later, as Cash and Savannah get dressed for a local funeral, Finney decides to stay behind at the farm, promising to meet them later for lunch at their favorite diner. At the church, Cash listens closely to a powerful sermon about new beginnings. The service is led by Pastor Wilder, a man who knows all about second chances, having once run with Big Cat's gang himself. After the service, Wilder pulls Cash aside, gently suggesting he take Finney on a hunting trip to help him process his grief. Cash and Savannah then head to the diner, ordering Finney's favorite meal and waiting for him to arrive. But he never shows up. After hours of waiting, Cash steps outside to call him. The moment he's out of sight, members of Big Cat's gang roll up, including two ruthless enforcers known as the Buck and the Doe. They slide into the booth next to Savannah, waiting for Cash to return, trying to bait him into a fight. But Cash keeps his cool. He grabs Savannah and walks away, refusing to be pulled back into the violent life he left behind. Arriving back at the farm, they find Finney heavily intoxicated, dancing alone to loud music. Cash pulls him aside, demanding to know where his head is at. The two men get into a heated argument over how the farm should be run, with Cash terrified that Finney's reckless behavior is going to ruin them. Eventually, tensions cool. Cash promises he's going to handle everything, urges Finney to get a grip on his crippling addiction, and suggests they take Savannah out for a hunting trip to clear their heads. Meanwhile, word on the street is that Big Cat is ramping up her drug operations. Two rival criminals, Reggie and Harland, sneak into one of her cooking sites. They scope it out, planning to bring their crew back to hit the place, but Reggie triggers a deadly trap and is killed instantly. A terrified Harland tries to run, but Big Cat's heavily armed guards quickly track him down and take him hostage. Back at the farm, Cash realizes the terrifying reality of their situation. Knowing what Big Cat is capable of, he decides he has to find out exactly how much debt Finney has buried them in. He drives into town and pays a visit to the local law firm to confront Zeke, Big Cat's arrogant son, to get a hard number. But Big Cat isn't waiting around. While Finney and Savannah are hanging out in the cabin, the Buck, the Doe, and a crew of thugs kick the door in. Sent to collect Finney's debt in blood, they begin brutally beating him. Unable to watch her father be tortured, Savannah makes a desperate move. She sprints to her bedroom, grabs her hunting knife, and charges back in, stabbing the Doe. But she's quickly overpowered and captured. When Cash returns, he finds his home completely trashed. Horrified, he makes sure Finney and Savannah are safe inside, then speeds straight to the sheriff's office. He lays everything out for Sheriff Hollister and Deputy Duke, begging for their help. He spends the entire day driving all over town, trying to pull every string he has to find a peaceful resolution and save the farm Rachel loved so much. But every door is slammed in his face. Completely out of options, Cash decides to walk straight into the lion's den. He drives to Big Cat's estate to confront her face to face. Big Cat welcomes him with a cold smile, revealing that this was never really about the money. She tells him he can work off the debt. She's building a massive criminal empire and needs his lethal set of skills to make it happen, admitting she always admired his ruthless efficiency, the way he eliminated threats before they even had a chance to react. Then she drops the hammer. If Cash refuses, she will have Finney killed. If he accepts, she will wipe the slate clean and give the farm back, but only after he completes 3 missions of her choosing. Trapped, Cash breaks the one promise he swore he'd keep. He agrees to step back into the blood-soaked world that nearly destroyed him. Driving back home, the weight of his decision crushes him. Knowing Big Cat's deceptive nature, he highly doubts 3 jobs will truly be the end of it, and vows to find a permanent way out. Pulling up to the farm, he finds Finney sitting quietly by a fire with a bottle. Cash sits down beside him, and as the 2 men share their heavy grief, Cash promises he's never going to let his family fall. Over at Big Cat's compound, Harland is being brutally interrogated. Cash's phone suddenly rings. It's time for mission number 1. The Buck picks him up, and they are sent to tail Harland, who has been released to unknowingly lead them straight to his crew. Following him to a secluded hideout, the Buck radios for backup, preparing to wipe the rival gang off the map. When the hit squad arrives, the Doe hands Cash a pistol and orders him to cover the back door while they storm the front. Gunfire erupts as Big Cat's men slaughter everyone inside. A terrified survivor bursts out the back door, and Cash raises his weapon and pulls the trigger, but it just clicks. The gun is completely empty. Realizing he was set up, Cash acts purely on instinct, tackling the man to the dirt and pinning him down just as the Doe steps out and executes him at point-blank range. Cash makes it back to the farm at dawn, physically and mentally exhausted, only to find Finney pouring every last drop of alcohol down the drain. Cash watches with quiet pride, a glimmer of hope sparking that Finney might finally beat his demons. Despite having 0 sleep, Cash honors their promise, and they take Savannah out hunting. Later, Cash pays a visit to Pastor Wilder, confessing everything that's happening. Because Wilder walked the same dark path, he completely understands Cash's dilemma. He begs Cash not to let the darkness consume him again. Taking comfort in the pastor's words, Cash opens up about his old life working for Big Cat, how he, Finney, and Rachel used to live fast, get high, and focus only on surviving the next job. They bond over the matching burn scars on their right hands, the agonizing price they both paid for their freedom. A few days later, the phone rings from mission number 2. Cash is paired with Wise, one of Big Cat's top lieutenants, to oversee a massive drug deal. A middleman named Lazarus jumps in the car with them, overly enthusiastic about the payday. Sensing the heavy tension in the vehicle, Lazarus tries to ease their nerves, promising he knows these buyers and has everything completely under control. They arrive at an isolated drop spot and start unloading the product, but the second Lazarus realizes something is off about the buyers, Wise panics and shoots Lazarus dead on the spot. Checking Lazarus's phone, Wise sees a warning message and completely loses his nerve. Cash immediately takes command, trying to defuse a powder keg as the heavily armed buyers roll up and demand to know where Lazarus is. Cash and Wise desperately try to smooth things over, but the paranoia is too high. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose. The buyers open fire, triggering a chaotic, deafening shootout. When the smoke finally clears, every single buyer is dead except for one low-level dealer. Desperate to stop the body count, Cash negotiates directly with the terrified survivor, finishes the transaction peacefully, and lets him walk away with his life. Cash and Wise secure the cash, torch their bullet-riddled car to destroy the evidence, and call Finney to extract them. Later, as Cash and Finney wash the getaway car to scrub the forensic evidence, Cash finally reveals the grim details of his deal with Big Cat. Finney is terrified. He knows the underworld doesn't hand out happy endings, and he's convinced Big Cat is just using Cash to clean up her messes before she kills them all. Realizing Finney is right, Cash decides to enact a backup plan. He reaches out to Deputy Duke for a secret meeting. Given Cash's notorious past, Duke arrives at the rendezvous expecting an ambush. Instead, he's stunned when Cash offers to act as a confidential informant to take Big Cat down from the inside. After laying down the ground rules, Duke agrees, promising to keep Cash's name completely off the books to protect his family. He assures Cash he'll get with his tactical team to figure out exactly how to execute the raid. Over the next few days, Cash and Finney take Savannah out for target practice, teaching her how to handle a rifle and enjoying a rare moment of peace. Meanwhile, Deputy Duke hits the jackpot. He pulls over one of Big Cat's biggest distributors for speeding. When she tries to bribe him, he refuses, prompting her to attack him. Duke quickly overpowers her, slaps on the cuffs, and pops the trunk, finding a massive stash of narcotics. Knowing he finally has the concrete evidence he needs to raid Big Cat's operation, he excitedly leaves a voicemail on Cash's phone. But that night, before Cash can check his messages, the Buck and the Doe pull up to the farm and order him into their vehicle. A deeply uneasy Cash gets in, his mind racing through tactical scenarios on how to survive if this is a setup. They arrive at Big Cat's sprawling estate, which is locked down and swarming with heavily armed mercenaries. Big Cat calls everyone in for a major announcement. Cash's instincts scream that something is wrong. Seeking a moment of clarity, he steps away from the crowd and walks over to the massive fireplace, the exact spot where Big Cat forced him to burn his own hand years ago. Cash returns to the main room just as Big Cat brings out the evening's entertainment. To Cash's absolute horror, her men drag in Deputy Duke, beaten to a pulp, bleeding and tied to a chair. Cash freezes, the air knocked out of his lungs. His mind scrambles to figure out how Duke got compromised and how he can possibly save him. The Buck and the Doe brutally assault the deputy, while the rest of the gang watches in dead silence. Knowing Duke won't make it out alive, Cash decides the only merciful thing to do is put a bullet in him himself to end his suffering. He steps forward, offering to handle the execution, but Big Cat smiles coldly, rejects his offer, and casually executes the deputy herself. Cash masks his absolute shock, struggling to keep his composure as his anxiety skyrockets. Returning home in the dead of night, Cash pieces the nightmare together. With Duke dead, his only lifeline to the law is gone. He realizes that extreme violence is the only currency Big Cat deals in, and he prepares to pay her in full. He knows this county isn't big enough for the both of them anymore. It's time for war. The next morning, the Buck cracks Duke's encrypted phone, discovers the alliance with Cash, and immediately alerts Big Cat. She instantly puts a kill order on Cash's head. Unaware of the escalating war, a newly sober Finney wakes up, puts on his Sunday best, and gets ready for church. Cash calls him, telling him he's busy tracking down evidence to end Big Cat, firmly declining Finney's offer to help and telling him to just take Savannah to the service. While Cash spends the morning doing tactical reconnaissance on Big Cat's various properties, Finney and Savannah sit quietly in the church pews. Pastor Wilder is thrilled to see Finney and delivers a heavy sermon on the toxic nature of anger and guilt. The words hit too close to home, and an overwhelmed Finney has to step outside. After the service, Finney waits for Savannah, pulling her into a tight hug and tearfully apologizing for letting his grief blind him to her needs. She forgives him instantly. Wilder checks in on them, offering his unwavering support. Hoping to salvage the day, Finney offers to take Savannah to lunch at the diner. But as they walk through town, Big Cat's hit squad intercepts them, demanding Cash's location. The thugs separate them, grab Finney, and begin mercilessly beating him to death. Just in time, Pastor Wilder charges in, fighting off the attackers and dragging Savannah to safety. In the horrific aftermath, Finney is rushed to the hospital with catastrophic injuries, but tragically, he doesn't survive. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hollister visits Big Cat's mansion, revealing a sickening truth. The sheriff's department has been on Big Cat's payroll the entire time. At the hospital, Cash receives the devastating news. He completely breaks down over Finney's death, but forces himself to stay strong for her shattered niece. He entrusts her to Wilder's care, then walks out, a dead man walking, ready to burn the whole county to the ground. Cash aggressively hunts down the Doe. He ambushes him, engaging in a brutal street fight that ends with Cash fatally taking the Doe out. But in the chaos of the brawl, Cash is violently struck by a speeding car. Disoriented and bleeding, he wakes up alone in the street and manages to drag himself into the shadows just seconds before Big Cat and the corrupt police arrive on the scene. Simultaneously, the Buck and a heavily armed strike team kick down Pastor Wilder's door, looking for Cash. They vilely interrogate Wilder, demanding Savannah's location, but the pastor cakes the beating, refusing to say a word. Listening from her hiding spot, Savannah can't let a good man die for her. She steps out and surrenders. When Cash finally makes it to Wilder's house, he finds the front door shattered. He clears the house tactically, only to find a badly beaten Wilder, who is devastated that they took Savannah. But Wilder isn't backing down. He arms up, ready to ride with Cash. The two men immediately launch a counteroffensive. They drive straight into town and brazenly kidnap Big Cat's son, Zeke, right off the street in broad daylight. Word travels fast. Big Cat, who is personally guarding Savannah, receives the ransom call from Cash, setting up a hostage exchange. Leaving Wise to watch the tied-up teenager, Big Cat storms out to mobilize her private army. Anticipating a double cross, Cash goes off-book. He silently infiltrates the mansion compound on foot, while the pastor drives up to the heavily fortified main gates with Zeke, demanding the trade. Inside the mansion, Savannah notices Wise let his guard down. She slips out of her bindings and grabs a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, the very same fireplace that scarred her uncle. Outside, a desperate Big Cat agrees to the hostage exchange to save her son, ordering her men to bring the girl out. But before they can, Savannah blasts Wise with a shotgun. The deafening blast echoes across the compound, shattering the standoff. Absolute chaos erupts as a massive multi-directional firefight breaks out. In the storm of bullets, Pastor Wilder takes a hit and goes down hard, allowing Zeke to break free and sprint toward the tree line. But Zeke catches a stray bullet and stumbles bleeding into the dark woods, only to find himself face to face with Big Cat's vicious guard dogs. Inside the sprawling mansion, Savannah is holding her own, pinning down the buck with covering fire. Just as the buck moves in for the kill, Cash breaches the back entrance. He pushes Savannah behind him and goes head-to-head with Big Cat's top enforcer. After a deafening exchange of gunfire empties both of their weapons, they lock into a savage, room-destroying hand-to-hand brawl. Fueled by pure rage, Cash batters the buck until he is dead on the floor. Outside, Big Cat hears her son's horrifying screams echoing from the woods. She sprints into the trees, only to collapse in absolute despair as she finds Zeke's mutilated body. Weeping over her dead son, her grief instantly morphs into psychotic, unhinged rage. She picks up her weapon and marches back toward the mansion to slaughter everyone inside. Entering the bloody estate, she spots Savannah helping a heavily wounded Cash. She raises her gun and shoots Cash. Panicking, Savannah drags her bleeding uncle into an adjacent room for cover. Knowing he can't fight anymore, Cash orders Savannah to run and leave him behind. But Savannah refuses to lose the last piece of her family. She circles around through the shadows, flanks Big Cat, and drives her hunting knife deep into the crime lord's back. Big Cat hits the floor dead, finally freeing her uncle and the entire county from her tyrannical grip. Months later, the dust has settled. Pastor Wilder and Cash have fully recovered from their wounds. The pastor is back at his pulpit, guiding his community into an era of peace. Back at the farm, under a bright Kentucky sky, Cash and Savannah are finally living a quiet life, tending to their animals and looking out for one another as the screen fades to black.